Hello and welcome to today's video. So today we'll talk about how do I plan for the weekend. So this is a very common question I get from my clients, from friends, family, and from anyone I help. So we'll dive into how do we plan, how do we react to the weekend, and what happens if we overindulge. So let's dive straight into this. So here is a very common trend that we see. So Monday to Friday, we restrict ourselves, we tend to cut down everything. And then comes Friday evening or Saturday morning, that's when we tend to let loose a little bit more. So we'll order takeaway, we'll eat out, we'll have a few beers, we'll even go out and get drunk. And comes Monday morning, we tend to over restrict again and go back into that sort of restricting phase, and we may feel a little bit of guilt and shame, so we tend to skip meals and only have salads for a couple of days, and then we just look forward to that Saturday again to go through that same process where we'll order, and this cycle can happen for quite some time. So over restricting during the week and overeating during the weekend. So this is known as a binge restrict cycle. Like I mentioned, it's a period of binging, so overeating, followed by a period of over restricting, and this cycle continues. So this cycle can be very, very emotionally draining. So if this is something that resonates with you, so hopefully this video will help. So let's talk about reactive against proactive dieting. So on the left side, we can see a week where we've overeaten on Saturday and Sunday, and then we react to this and have less calories throughout the week. So Monday to Friday, 1,500 calories, after having 3,500 calories on Saturday and Sunday. And this is more the reactive side. So you can see Saturday and Sunday overeating, and then you react by cutting down your calories and restricting your food intake. And on the right side, this is more the proactive. So where you know something's going to happen the weekend, so you have plans. So from Monday to Friday, you choose to cut down your calories slightly, and then eat a bit more during the weekend. So as you can see, both look very similar. In both cases, there's an average of 2,000 to 2,100 calories per day. However, the psychological effect is very, very different. What happens when you are reactive? So if you overeat and you react to it on the Monday, there's a lot of guilt and shame involved, or negative self-talk. Whereas on the other hand, for proactive dieting, where you've planned, you know exactly what's going to happen, you're a lot more in control, and after overeating slightly during the weekend, you are there's no guilt that follows, because this was exactly what you had planned. So essentially, the main difference is the planning, and this is why planning is key when it comes to proactive dieting or planning for the weekend. So when it comes to planning, what I would say is, if you're, let's say in this case, if your target calories is about 2,000 calories a day, I would recommend to cut it down slightly. We don't want to over restrict either. So we want to cut it maybe 100, 200 calories a day, just so that you don't feel too much the difference. So you wouldn't, it wouldn't be too hard to do this during the week, and then you can have a bit extra during the weekend. One of the questions after this is, what if I haven't planned and I still overindulge? So if you haven't planned something, or something happens during the weekend that you didn't expect, or you decide to go out on a Saturday that you hadn't planned, and you consume a bit more calories, how to react to this. So this is where we're going to what if I overindulge. So first of all, let's talk a bit about rigid dieting and negative self-talk. So often negative self-talk comes after a period of overeating, especially if we are having a more of a rigid diet. So I touched on rigid dieting before. So there's a lot of all or nothing approach to dieting. There's a dichotomous thinking around food. So basically we have cheat meals or good or bad days, good or bad food, etc. And we tend to follow rules such as low carbs or low fat, or even no food past 6 p.m. for example. Controlled and specific dieting behaviors as well, that comes with rigid dieting. And what happens whenever we tend to overeat while we are rigid dieting, there's a belief that we have bad self-control, which often leads to actual poor self-control. So if you tend to overeat and you tell yourself that you have low motivation, you have no control over your behavior, this often leads to even more of this. We also tend to have moments of guilt or shame and self-judgment when we overeat during a rigid diet. So what do we want to do from this is, so we want to step away from those feelings, so that overeating, shame and guilt, and that self-judgment. So there are a few research that shows the effect of shaming ourselves and others. So the research shows that there's an increase in long-term risk of obesity. It also leads to avoidance of exercise, and finally, psychological changes linked to poor metabolic health when it comes to using shaming of ourselves or others for change. So this is where self-compassion comes into play. So what is self-compassion? Self-compassion is when you act like you really care for yourself, and it shouldn't just be acting, it should be an actual thing. So you should care for yourself. So instead of negative self-talk, what we want to do is we want to be kinder to ourselves. We want to talk to ourselves like we would to a friend or a family. And this is a tip that I give to many of my clients. So sometimes the best thing to do, let's say you've overeaten and you feel that guilt, that shame, what we want to do is maybe speak to yourself out loud, and speak to yourself to the third person and tell you and pretend you're talking to a friend or a family or your sister. What would you tell your friend if they had gone through that exact same phase? Often what we would say is, it's okay, it happens, it's not the end of the world. The important thing is to just get back onto it and it'll be fine. And this is why self-compassion is so important. It's been positively associated with intrinsic motivation to exercise, and self-motivating statement as well has been linked to increasing intrinsic motivation, which basically means that internal motivation and really understanding why we're doing this. So that leads to caring more about yourself rather than shaming yourself into exercise or nutrition, or using shame to change. So essentially it's using that caring nature. So I'm doing this for me because I care for myself. I am exercising because I know this is the best thing for me. I won't eat this huge cake because I know this is not what's the best thing for me, rather than shame yourself into not eating it. So this is that slight different approach. The results are often similar, but in terms of that emotional, psychological effect, or how we feel emotionally, is very, very different. So now we'll actually get into what to do after we've overindulged. So the best thing to do is to just slip back into our routine. So essentially we want to do nothing different. So we don't want to restrict, we don't want to skip meals, and also we don't want to over exercise to burn it off. So this is not something that we want to do. We just want to go straight back into what we're doing. So that goes back to something I mentioned before. The amount of fat we have is dictated by the average energy we've consumed and the average energy we've expended for during our whole life up until this point. So emphasis on whole life, because that's just to show that it doesn't matter how much we've eaten yesterday, the day before, last weekend. If it's on the grand scheme of things, if it's compared to your whole life, this is not going to make a huge difference. So, and after you've overindulged, that's where we want to use self-compassion. So, like I mentioned, pretend you're speaking to a friend or family, speak out loud, also dig into that feeling and learn to accept it. So it's about accepting those feelings rather than denying them or numbing them. And also we want to remove the guilt and shame that I mentioned. So Brené Brown, who's a renowned psychologist, said, shame corrodes the very part of us that believes that we are capable of change. So this is a very sort of powerful quote that I wanted to put in there. So remember, the weekend, what we do during the weekend isn't what is going to slow our progress down or stop our progress. It's how we react to it that usually affects our progress the most. So make sure that you're in tune, and let's make sure that we react the best way possible. So if any of this resonated with you and you want to work on those things, and you find that you struggle a bit during the weekends and reacting to the weekend, so let me know. Again, this is the sort of thing I work on. This is the sort of things I do with my clients. So let me know, and I'd be more than happy to discuss and help you. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and take care.